Welcome to 21st Sports Recap and Reaction for the Detroit Lions at the Seattle Seahawks in their Week 4 matchup played October 5th, 2015 on Monday Night Football. And we've got controversy. It's at the end of this game, the referees made a bad call, and that would cost the Lions the game, and the Seahawks would win. But we're going to go over the scores, and we're going to go over the end of this game, the final 6 minutes that led up to that controversial call. And we're going to go over the stats, and we're going to give our breakdown and analysis. So the first quarter was scoreless, and the first score of this game was about 4 minutes into the second quarter with about 11 minutes left before halftime when Russell Wilson hit Doug Baldwin for a 24-yard touchdown pass. Hauschka added the extra point, and it was 7-0 Seattle over Detroit. So then with about 5.5 minutes left before halftime, Prater hit a 41-yard field goal for the Lions and put them on the scoreboard for the first time in this game, and it was now a 4-point lead for Seattle with the score Seahawks 7, Lions 3. Then with a little over a minute left before halftime, Hauschka hit a 51-yard field goal, putting the Seahawks back up by 7 with the score Seattle 10, Detroit 3. So that was the score at intermission. Then in the third quarter, less than 4 minutes in, Hauschka hit a 52-yard field goal, his second 50-plus yard field goal of this game, and now it was a 10-point lead for the Seahawks, 13-3. So that was the score after 3 quarters of play. Then in the fourth quarter, with a little less than 9 minutes left in the fourth, Russell Wilson was sacked. A Hidebo came in on the edge. He forced the fumble. It was recovered by Reed, and he ran it back 27 yards for the touchdown. So defensive touchdown off a fumble recovery for the Lions. And the extra point by Prater was good. And so now it's a 3-point game with the score Seattle 13, Detroit 10. So now let's get to the play-by-play action. So after they end up scoring on that fumble recovery, Seattle would end up going 3 and out, and they punted the ball to the Lions. So now the Lions would get the ball back with about 6:20 on the clock, and they were backed up against their own end zone. It was quite the punt by Ryan. He backed him up, and on the recovery, it ended up where it almost was a safety, but he got out to the 9-yard line. And so the Lions took over on their own 9. They lost a yard on first down with a run by Abdullah. That brought up 2nd and 11. Stafford then went to Megatron. He picked up 5 to bring up 3rd and 6 from the 13. Stafford then went to Golden Tate. He picked up 22 yards. Now it's first down on the Detroit 35. Stafford then went to Moore. He picked up 4. 2nd and 6 at the 39. Stafford goes to Megatron. Johnson picked up 6 yards. Now it's first down at the Detroit 45. Abdullah ran for 9 yards, setting up 2nd and 1 at the Seattle 46. See it across midfield. Stafford then went to Tim Wright. He picked up 26 yards and a first down at the Seattle 20. So Lions now at the red zone. And then they ended up with the run by Zenner for 6 yards. That brought it to the 2-minute warning, and it was now 2nd and 4 at the Seattle 14 coming out of the 2-minute warning. Zenner then picked up 3 yards, and Seattle took their first timeout, followed by Detroit's first timeout of the second half. So it's now 3rd and 1 at the Seattle 1-yard line. But then we ended up with a crazy play. As what ended up happening, actually it was 3rd and 11 from the 11-yard line. And so they needed 1 yard for the first down. Stafford ends up throwing it to Megatron. Calvin Johnson gets the ball, and he's trying to extend the play. He caught it around the 9-yard line, and he had the first down already. If he had gone down, of course, you're not just going to go down. He's going for the extra yards. He saw the end zone. He's going for the end zone. But Earl Thomas was there to slow him down with the tackle, but he was reaching for the goal line, trying to extend to break the plane. But here came Kam Chancellor. Killer Cam comes up, and he punches the ball out of Megatron's hands. The ball goes into the end zone, and I believe it was Wright who ended up pushing the ball out of the back of the end zone, and it was called a touchback. And so it was called a touchback at that point. At that point, there was no controversy. At that point, now the Seahawks would take over. it wouldn't be until later, once there was a time to review the play after it was all said and done, that the controversy would come out. So before we get to the controversy of that play, let's just finish out what happened in the rest of the game, because there was still a minute 45 left when Seattle took over on their own 20 after that play was called a touchback. They handed off to Thomas Rouse. He picked up a yard. Detroit used their second timeout. They give it back to Rouse. He picked up 7 yards, so now it was 3rd and 2 on the 28, and Detroit used their final timeout. Russell Wilson then on 3rd and 2 scrambled around. He was under heavy pressures. He was under lots of pressure in this game. He had actually fumbled the ball twice in the fourth quarter before that fumble by Megatron for the Lions. And he gotten sacked 6 times in this game. But on this play, he scrambled and he found Kearse for a 50-yard reception. So that brought the ball to the Detroit 22, and all that was left to do for the Seahawks was to line up in the victory formation and for Russell Wilson to take 3 knees as this game would come to a close with the final score, Seattle 13, Detroit 10. So the Seahawks are now 2-2. They're undefeated at home. Detroit 0-4. They have not won a game. Of course, 3 of those losses out of the 4 were on the road. They've only played 1 game in Detroit so far this season, so a tough start for Detroit. But where it gets even tougher is after the game, one of the heads of officiating came on the air on Monday Night Football on ESPN in the booth with Gruden and Tirico, and he said that a player is not allowed to push the ball out of the end zone, and that's what KJ Wright did. See, it would be a different thing if a Detroit player had pushed the ball out, but a defensive player is not allowed to push the ball out to force the touchback. See, because the Lions had possession last, and if the defensive player pushes the ball out of the end zone for the touchback, then possession reverts back to the team who last possessed the ball, that being the Lions, and it would be half the distance to the goal, which would have put them on, they were already at the half-yard line, so it would be half of the half-yard line. They basically, at that point, would have been about 8 inches away from the goal line with a 1st and goal. No guarantee that they get the touchdown, but you kind of would figure they would have at least sent it to overtime. More than likely they would have got in, although Seattle's defense had been playing pretty good against the run as they were shutting down Detroit's running game. I mean, the leading rusher was Abdullah with just 33 yards off 13 carries. We'll get to that in a moment. So it's definitely a controversial call once again in Seattle, same area of the end zone where the Fail Marys, they call it, happened. So once again, Seattle gets a big break on Monday night in prime time with a controversial call, this time against the Lions. Of course, the last time was against another NFC North opponent, the Packers. But a crazy play here. It was actually the vice president of NFL officiating that brought this to attention. Well, actually, it was a bunch of different officials. They're talking about on the NFL Network. They're talking about on ESPN. It's just instant controversy right here with this play. So they said the way it happened, Calvin Johnson catches it. He has the first down, but he's going for the touchdown. Earl Thomas is tackling him. Kam Chancellor comes up from behind, punches it, and he hits the ball at the half-yard line, sending it into the end zone. So now it's a fumble. But what made the play a penalty was that KJ Wright touched the ball and pushed it out of bounds from the end zone to the back of the end zone. If he had just let the ball take its natural course, it would have went out the end zone, touchback, and then things would have transpired as they did. But they didn't transpire that way, even though they were supposed to go the other way. It was supposed to be Detroit's ball. The official on the replay, you see, he's looking right at the play. And this is a play, less than 2 minutes left. I mean, all turnovers are reviewed, all the plays are under 2 minutes left. I mean, they looked at this thing a bunch of times. It's crazy that they missed it, and then they didn't catch it until after it was too late, after everybody had already gone home and both teams are in the locker rooms and having done. So Seattle gets the win in controversial fashion. Although you can't say that they didn't earn the win, so they did play a heck of a game. especially on the defensive side. And that's the thing about this. If it wasn't for the controversy, all we'd be talking about right now would be Kam Chancellor and how he made that big play. And regardless of the controversy of Wright pushing the ball out of the back of the end zone, Kam Chancellor did make one heck of a play there. He saved the game for Seattle, no matter how you look at it, because Megatron would have scored the touchdown. Even if he didn't score the touchdown, if he gets to the ground with the ball in his possession, now Detroit has a 1st and goal on the half-yard line. So Kam Chancellor won the game for Seattle with that play. He was making big plays all game long. Seattle's defense was playing amazing. They had held Detroit to just 3 points on offense. The only touchdown by the Lions came on that fumble recovery as their defense scored the only touchdown for Detroit. So it was quite the game. If you like defensive slugfest, this was the game for you. I said 6 sacks for the Lions defense. They forced 3 fumbles in this game. They were just, they were in beast mode. Of course, beast mode did not play this game. But let's look at the stats in this game. Russell Wilson, very accurate, 20 for 26, 287 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions. He did fumble the ball a couple of times when he was sacked. As I said, he was sacked 6 times in this game. Like I said, he did fumble the ball as well a couple of times when he was sacked, and one of those fumbles did go for a touchdown. They actually fumbled the ball 4 times in this game overall, the Seahawks, and they lost 3 of them. But Russell Wilson, I'll tell you, he was under a lot of pressure in this game. He was constantly scrambling away from the pass rush. The Lions were brilliant blitzes from all, layers of their defense, all levels. They're bringing it, from the linebackers and from the safeties, from the corners. Just they were coming at him from the left, from the right, up the middle. Lots of blitzes in this game. He was under heavy pressure. He was having to scramble a lot. Like I say, he got sacked 6 times, but he was making plays happen as well. And he didn't throw any interceptions, although the 2 fumbles. We look at Matthew Stafford, 24 for 35, 203 yards passing, no touchdowns, no interceptions. So Stafford didn't really get going until that final drive, which he was actually perfect on that drive. I believe he was 6 for 6 on that final drive before the fumble happened. And we look at the running games, both teams. Thomas Rouse, the rookie from Central Michigan, the former Chippewa, 17 carries for 48 rushing yards. Russell Wilson had 10 carries for 40 yards. Fred Jackson, 3 carries for 21 yards. And for the Lions, Amir Abdullah, 13 carries for 33 yards. Zenner, just 2 carries for 9 yards. Golden Tate actually had a carry for 6 yards. He also had 3 receptions for 29 yards, the former Seahawk. The leading receiver in the game, though, was Kearse. Jermaine Kearse, of course, had that 50-yard reception at the end of the game that really sealed the deal. And he had another reception for 34 yards, so 2 receptions for 84 yards for Kearse. Tyler Lockett had 4 receptions for 58 yards. He did fumble a punt in this game. He was kind of running at the ball, and it bounced off his face mask. But, the defense hunkered down, and they were able to make up for that. And, they had a lot of turnovers for the Seahawks, but their defense just played stellar as they just were shutting down that offense of Detroit, especially their running game. But Doug Baldwin, 3 catches for 36 yards. Fred Jackson had 2 catches for 33 yards to go along with his 21 rushing yards, which gave him 54 total yards. Jimmy Graham, 4 receptions for 29 yards in this game. And for Detroit, Calvin Johnson had 7 receptions for 56 yards. Theo Riddick, 5 receptions for 31 yards. We look at the kickers. Hauschka, 2 for 2, both 50-plus yarders on the field goals for Hauschka. He also was 1 for 1 on the extra points. Prater, 1 for 1 on the field goals, 1 for 1 on the extra points. And we look at the defense. Kam Chancellor with that forced fumble. He was the leading tackler for Seattle. And we look at the Lions defense, so they really went off. It said 6 sacks. Ahidebo had a sack and a forced fumble. That was the one that actually ended up being the touchdown for the Lions, which Reed scooped up. Lewis had a sack. Jones had a half sack. Ziggy Ansah had 2 sacks. He also had a forced fumble as well, and he recovered that fumble. That was quite a play by Ziggy Ansah. Tep had a sack as well, and Taylor had a sack, a half sack. So 18 first downs for Seattle, 12 first downs for Detroit. On third downs, Seattle converted 6 of 13, 46%. Just 3 for 13 for Detroit, just 23%. As the Seahawks converted twice as many third downs. Total net yards, 345 for the Seahawks, 256 for the Lions. Net rushing yards, 110 for Seattle, 53 for Detroit, as they averaged just 2.9 on the ground per carry. Net passing yards, 235 for Seattle. As I said, Russell Wilson sacked 6 times for 52 yards lost. Of course, that line was not protecting him at all in this game. 203 was the net passing yards for Detroit. Stafford not sacked at all, even though their line's pretty banged up too. Then we look at penalties. Not a lot of penalties in this game, actually. Just 5 penalties for Seattle for 30 yards, 4 against Detroit for 37 yards. Those 4 fumbles for the Seahawks, they lost 3 of them, and Detroit also fumbled twice, losing once. And we look at the red zone. Neither team scored a red zone touchdown. They both made one trip to the red zone, which they did not convert into a touchdown both times. They had to settle for field goals. And the time of possession was in favor of Seattle, 32 minutes and 4 seconds versus 27 minutes and 56 seconds for Detroit. So those are the numbers right there. So it was quite a game. It was pretty crazy. Actually, I thought Seattle was in, control for the most part, especially the way their defense was playing. They just would not let Detroit get anything going on offense until that final drive. That was, the thing at the very end of the game. Detroit all of a sudden, they made stuff happen in that fourth quarter. Their defense, too, played really strong in the fourth quarter, forcing those 2 fumbles, of course, that one defensive touchdown. And then, at the end, finally, Matthew Stafford gets something going on that last drive when he was struggling the whole game, not really moving the ball, especially their running game. Seattle was doing an excellent job of shutting down Detroit's running game and holding that high-powered passing attack in check, as the Legion of Boom was in full force in this game. And then just at the end there, that was crazy the way, they drove down the field. But Cam came up with the big play regardless of the mistake by the officials with this, rule where you cannot push the ball out of bounds on that touchback, with being the other team, being the defensive team. So it was a crazy finish, but really Detroit, the way they were playing throughout the game, they really didn't deserve to win this game. At the end, they made quite the effort. They almost pulled off a crazy comeback win at the end. But, that's just how that's how the ball bounces, I guess you could say. But Seattle, they were making the clutch plays as well, especially, with Cam punching the ball out there at the goal line. And then with that big 50-yard pass that Russell Wilson made on 3rd and 2 to Kearse at the end of the game, which was able to secure the victory, because then all they had to do was take 3 knees. So came up with the big plays when he needed to. And that's the thing about Russell Wilson, he just keeps fighting. He was under a lot of pressure, and he was scrambling around, extending plays, making things happen. They said they converted those 6 third downs. So he kept, the ball in possession of the offense to keep their defense off the field. And, Seattle, they said they played a good game. Not a lot of points. Both teams were stingy on defense. And they're 2 really good defenses. The Lions, even at 0-4, they got a good defense. They've got a lot of talent, really, on both sides of the ball. You got to start wondering. We already saw Philbin, lose his job down in Miami. You got to wonder if how long Caldwell's going to be there in Detroit with the way the Lions are playing. He's got to be on the hot seat as well, as the Lions are too good to be 0-4. Of course, this game, I don't know, really, what do you say with the way that it goes down like that? Because you don't know what would have happened if they get the ball. Would they have gotten in the end zone? The way they were running the ball, Seattle had no problem stopping them from running the ball. And if they know they're running it right there on the goal line, I don't know if they would have been able to punch it in. Although you would figure it would have went to overtime with the field goal, would have tied it up. So, but we'll never know, and that's just how these things go sometimes, because to err is human, and the referees certainly are human. But let me know what you think in the comments section below. Definitely interested to read your thoughts and opinions about this controversial game and how it went down. He said, it was a slugfest. If you like defense, this was a fun game to watch for sure. It was a lot of crazy moments throughout this game. Like I said, let me know what you thought in the comments section below. Thank you very much for listening. It's greatly appreciated. I hope you had a good day and had a great weekend and enjoyed all the sports.